Paperback Rocker, episode 96. Hey, this is Matt Severson, the Paperback Rocker, and I'm broadcasting from my 6x9 foot cinder block shack in the desert of northern Mexico, southern Texas. Welcome and thanks for checking out my show.
The Paperback Rocker Show is on the air.
Hey everybody, what's up? It's your old friend, the Paperback Rocker, Matt Severson, back again with yet another installment of the Blue Whiskey novel. And let's just get right into it. When last we read, our hero, Stanton Wheelhouse III, was talking about the music business, and he was explaining how some things worked, how things were paid for always off the top before the profit is calculated, which he becomes very bitter about, as you will no doubt discover. We are on the bottom of page 220. Contact me at paperbackrocker@live.com if you ever want to get a signed copy of any of my books sent to you or a loved one, or a friend, or someone you don't like. Doesn't matter to me. Okay, here we go. If I sound jaded, I don't mean to come across that way. It's my fault I was too ignorant to fully understand the terms of my contract with Lucite. Hell, I didn't even read the thing. Those were the days before entertainment lawyers. I wish I had Nicky Pepperonzi with me back then, like I do now. Some of these things that are casually mentioned like that are references to people in other books of mine. They are all connected. Okay? Just so you know. Lucite, and another one was that guy Otis that he ate soul food with early in this book in that little soul food shack in Stringtown, Mississippi, or Stringtown, Alabama. And that's a character in my novel Black Dog, which will probably be the next one I read. Okay, here we go. Lucite didn't make me any money, but they made me a star, a minor star. Forgive my ego. I happily traded the high profit margins of my self-releases for what every musician covets, distribution. The internet had not been imagined in even the most futuristic science fiction novel. At that time, computers were house-sized monstrosities secreted away on military bases. I had sold 12,000 albums on my own. It's an impressive number relatively, but the money I made provided only a subsistence lifestyle. More importantly, my sales proved to the record company that my music was a viable commodity. At my first meeting with the label executives, I was flattered and impressed when they produced copies of my self-released albums. The only thing I did right during our negotiations was refuse to turn the rights of them over to Lucite. Present at that fateful meeting was the man who would be tied to me for the next decade, a record producer by the decidedly English name of Lord Brighton Rock. The title of Lord had been bestowed upon him by himself, but I didn't know it at the time. He was introduced to me with the deference normally granted to royalty. I had never heard of him. "Stanton, this is Lord Brighton Rock from England," said one of the gray-suited men. "Pleased to meet you," I said. I looked at him with a bland expression. Everyone seemed to be waiting for me to say something else, but I didn't have anything more to add. "Son, it's Lord Brighton Rock," the man said again. "Yeah, from England," I said. "I heard you." More uncomfortable silence. Lord Brighton stood up across the polished table and puffed out his chest. It was a posture I saw many times over the next 10 years. The man was only 5'4", but he had the personality of a bantam rooster. "Haven't you heard of me?" he asked. "Should I have?" I asked. "Have you heard of me?" Lord Brighton sat back down in his chair, and we gave each other dirty looks through the rest of the meeting. I signed all the papers. You would think it would have been a light-hearted affair, but the studio execs were like hungry fishermen who can see a trout in a clear stream about to take the bait. When the last signature had been pinned, the four executives vaulted out of their leather chairs, clapping each other's backs and shaking hands. They thought they had just reeled in the next Bob Dylan. Lord Brighton sat pouting. The A&R man, which stands for Artist and Repertoire, rushed over to me. The A&R man is effectively the liaison between label and artist. He said, "In 2 days you start rehearsals." "I don't need to rehearse," I said. He smiled, attempting to mask his thoughts. I saw a lot of thought masking around that time. "I'll call you tomorrow with the details," he said. "Congratulations, Stanton Wheelhouse III. You're the next big thing." He extended a hand and I shook it weakly. Whoops. I didn't like the sound of that. Chapter 19. A taxi dropped me off in front of the nondescript building where the rehearsal space was supposed to be. It was a cinder block cube, 3 or 4 stories tall, without a single window. I figured out why there were no windows later, when I quantified the staggering dollar amount of music gear inside this one building. Windows are what thieves like to break, so they can enter surreptitiously and pilfer to their heart's delight. That would not be happening at this rehearsal building, which was like a Fort Knox on the Lower East Side. A single steel door was the only entrance at street level. The place had a name I can't remember now, but it was nowhere to be seen. That reminds me of a huge mistake a lot of beginners make after they start a band. They buy either a van or an enclosed trailer to haul their gear around in, and they paint the name of their band on the side. It's an advertisement for thieves, and the aftermath is heartbreaking to witness. Inside that steel door, I found myself in a little space about 4 feet square, with a thick glass partition separating me from a Neanderthalish man with a shaved head. He leaned forward to a hole the size of a Campbell's soup can lid and said, "Name?" He had a significant underbite and looked like a boxer. I leaned to the hole and said, "Stanton Wheelhouse, Lucite Records, subdivision of A&M. It was the first time I said that, and it felt weird. "Oh, sure," he said into the hole. "Go right in." There was a buzzing sound, and then a click. I entered the interior door. I found myself in a long hall which resembled something like a hotel corridor, if said hotel was in Lebanon. Or maybe it was more like a hallway in some tenement in the projects of Detroit. I had no clue what was going on, so I turned around and went back out through the inn door. The Neanderthalish man was still on the other side of the glass. "Do you have any idea where I'm supposed to go?" I asked the hole. "Oh, sure. This your first time here?" "Yes, sir." "I'll show yous around," he said. He propped a little handwritten sign against the glass that said, "Be right back. Wait here," and was gone. I couldn't help but think of that sign in a window of the Thirsty Possum all those years ago, the sign that might have been responsible for my whole journey. The interior door opened, startling me, and the man stood there in the two-tone blue uniform. He was enormous, and his muscles showed through his shirt. "Follow me, Mr. Wheelhouse. A&M's rooms are on the top floor. I'll give yous the VIP tour." Walking down the dingy hall behind the security guard, I detected that it was carpeted, but this carpet had long ago ceased to resemble anything plush. It was matted and hardened by embedded grease, grime, and grit. A single working light bulb illuminated the first portion of the long hall, but it was dark beyond that. The guard produced a powerful flashlight and turned it on. We passed the door, and I heard Simon and Garfunkel coming from it. "Your label's on the top floor because they're new, but from what I've heard, A&M is gonna do good." "What does being new have to do with the top floor?" I asked. "Farther to move the gear." "Oh, I get it." We turned the corner. "That's the freight elevator," he said, pointing at it with the flashlight beam. "Don't these halls have lights?" I asked. "What's your name, anyway?" "Fabian." "Don't these halls have lights, Fabian?" "Not anymore. The bulbs kept getting stolen to use in the rehearsal spaces. Boss finally quit replacing them." "So I'm supposed to bring a flashlight with me?" I asked. "Unless you want to use a torch like in the movies. We discourage that." "You're funny," I said. "Mildly amusing," he responded. "Yous want to know the way to the stairs? Or do yous want I should show yous how to operate the elevator?" "Let's go for the elevator. It might be mildly amusing." "Yous is funny, but I can tell yous ain't being a smart ass." That struck me there in the dark like it was something important. The guard opened a gate in front of the elevator. He said, "Most of the guys come in here smart asses. Everyone thinks they're the next Bob Dylan." We entered the elevator, which was 4 times larger than that of a typical office building. Fabian shut the gate and focused his light on the wall, where there were 4 steel buttons without numbers or lights. He pushed the top one. Nothing happened for a short time until a loud wooden clack, after which the elevator shuddered and rose surprisingly fast. At the rehearsal room, Fabian knocked on the door and opened it in the same motion, without waiting for a response. The room was fully lit, and it was a shock compared to the darkness of the hall. I saw Lord Brighton Rock, less emphatically dressed than at the contract signing, and another man I didn't recognize. I entered hesitantly, and Fabian shut the door and left before I thought to thank him. The room was hardly bigger than a prison cell, about 8 feet by 10. A single chair sat in the middle of the space. The floor was carpeted, and the walls were covered with nailed-up pieces of foam and carpet and cardboard. The place was claustrophobic as hell without any windows. "Mr. Rock," I said, extending to him my hand. "I have not met your friend." Lord Brighton shook my hand warmly and said, "Hello, Stanton. This is Jeff Eaton. He'll be the recording engineer on your album." I shook Jeff's hand and said, "Jeff, if you don't mind, may I ask how old you are?" 19. You're not going to hold that against me." It should have been a question, but it was a statement. I liked that. He was also British and very unassuming otherwise. He was a nice contrast to Lord Brighton Rock. "Of course I won't hold that against you," I said. "I started out at a very young age, too. If Lord Brighton has confidence in you, that's good enough for me." "Please don't put words in me mouth," said Lord Brighton. Jeff and I looked at each other with mutual disgust for Lord Brighton. The disgust was more mild than absolute. I felt the need to establish something with the man. "Mr. Rock, is this album about me or you?" "I don't know what you mean." "I'm sure Lucite Records knows that without the artist, there will be no record. Producers can be replaced. Most of the time, a good engineer is all that's needed, from what I hear, if the artist has a unique vision." "Well, do you have a vision, Mr. Wheelhouse?" "It's Lord Wheelhouse. if I'm supposed to call you by your official title. I think it's best we work as equals. Does that suit you, Lord Eaton? I said, bowing to Jeff. Quite so. Nothing else was said for a long minute. I thought Lord Brighton was going to make his exit. I didn't know how much he was indebted to Lucite and A&M or his creditors, but I knew that most men who put on a show like Lord Brighton are flat broke. What have you got for us? He asked finally. He had decided to make the best of it. I've got my third album, and my fourth, and my fifth, for that matter. Let's focus on the third, said Lord Brighton. If you don't mind, have a seat and play your songs. Jeff and I will listen and make mental notes. I played my third album in its entirety. Okay, I'm going to stop there. On the bottom of page 226, I hope you're enjoying this novel. I'm enjoying it. It's been a while since I read it. Read it many, many a time when I was writing it, to the point of near memorization, as every good author will tell you happens. So, have a great week. It's coming up on the holidays. I hope you have a lot of gratitude and appreciation for all the blessings in your life. And drop me a line at paperbackrocker@live.com and let me know what you think of this novel. I'll see you soon. Have a good one.
The Paperback Rocker has signed off.